Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News, an Indian perspective on All India Radio. This is Renuka, and with me is Nishit Kumar, bringing glimpses of major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring for you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. In this edition, we have an exclusive interview with Sanjay Bhattacharya, Secretary, Consular Passport and Visa CPV Division in the Ministry of External Affairs. As the world fights the COVID-19 pandemic, we begin with the program with message of precaution to stay safe and protected by following these 3 simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain social distancing, focus on hand and face hygiene. Now the headlines. India to chair UN Security Council panels on counter-terrorism, Taliban sanctions and Libya sanctions. New Delhi slams Islamabad for aiding and abating cross-border terrorism. Flights from Britain to India resume after being suspended in the wake of finding a new COVID strain in UK. Nationwide dry run for COVID vaccination conducted successfully in India. 16th edition of Pravasi Bharatiya Divas to be held in a virtual mode on Saturday. And in sports, India were at 96 for 2 in the first innings of Sydney Cricket Test, responding to the Aussie total of 336 runs. India will be chairing 3 key subsidiary bodies of the United Nations Security Council, UNSC. The panels are Counter-Terrorism Committee, Taliban Sanctions Committee and Libya Sanctions Committee. This was announced by Permanent Representative of India at United Nations Security Council, T.S. Tirumurthy today. On India's entry into the Taliban Sanctions Committee, Ambassador Tirumurthy said that the panel has always been a high priority for India.
The Taliban Sanctions Committee, also called the 1988 Sanctions Committee, has always been a high priority for India, keeping in mind our strong interest and commitment to peace, security, development and progress of Afghanistan. Our chairing this committee at this juncture will help keep the focus on the presence of terrorists and their sponsors threatening the peace process in Afghanistan. It has been our view that peace process and violence cannot go hand in hand.
On India's entry into the Counter-Terrorism Committee of the UNSC in 2022, Mr. Tirumurthy said, chairing of this committee has a special resonance for India.
The chairing of this committee has a special resonance for India, which has not only been in the forefront of fighting terrorism, especially cross-border terrorism, but has also been one of its biggest victims. This committee was formed in September 2001, soon after the tragic terrorist attack of 9/11 in New York.
Speaking on India assuming the chair of the Libya Sanctions Committee, he said the development occurs at a critical juncture internationally.
The Libya Sanctions Committee, also called the 1970 Sanctions Committee, is a very important subsidiary body of the Council which implements the sanctions regime, including a 2-way arms embargo on Libya, an assets freeze, a travel ban, measures on illicit export of petroleum, etc. We will be assuming the chair of this committee at a critical juncture when there is international focus on Libya and on the peace process.
At the flag installation ceremony in New York on Monday, which marked India's induction into the UN Security Council, India had asserted its commitment to be the voice for the developing world. Flights between the United Kingdom and India resumed today after suspension since the last week of December amid the new coronavirus strain concerns. A flight from the UK with 256 passengers landed in Delhi at 10:30 in the morning. The flights from India to the UK began on the 6th of this month. The Civil Aviation Ministry has informed that 30 flights will operate between the 2 countries every week. Meanwhile, India has issued the Standard Operating Procedure (SOP) for resumed flight services between India and UK. All the passengers from the UK flights deboarding at the Delhi are undergoing necessary COVID-19 tests. The passengers have been asked to keep a gap of 10 hours between the arrival from Britain and the connecting flight to other cities. Union Civil Aviation Minister Hardeep Singh Puri said the government is closely monitoring the situation in the UK and will review the flight's connectivity between the 2 countries as and when need arises. Britain unveiled its COVID vaccination plan on Thursday. Describing the vaccination rollout as a national challenge, Prime Minister Boris Johnson enlisted the armed forces' help in his vaccination plan. In a televised address, Mr. Johnson said that the army will use battle preparation techniques to help achieve the goal. Describing the elaborate facilities, Prime Minister Johnson asserted that the priority group earlier identified will be vaccinated by February 15.
If all goes well, these together should have the capacity to deliver hundreds of thousands of vaccines per day by January the 15th, and it is our plan that everyone should have a vaccination available within a radius of 10 miles.
On the Oxford-Zeneca vaccine, he said the vaccination process can be accelerated due to its availability. He added that it can be used to inoculate the elderly population in care homes.
And it's thanks to the arrival of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which can be stored at room temperature, that we can accelerate the pace of vaccination in care homes. We're using that vaccine in care homes for the first time today, and by the end of the month, we hope to have offered every elderly care home resident a vaccine.
In a related development, UK approved the Moderna COVID-19 vaccine on Friday. This is the third vaccine to have been approved by the UK regulator, the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA. The vaccine has been approved after meeting the required safety, quality and effectiveness standards. Hungary has extended partial lockdown measures until February 1st to curb the spread of the coronavirus. Prime Minister Viktor Orban justified the move on radio, saying there are not enough vaccines. Primary schools and kindergartens will remain open, while digital learning in secondary schools and universities will continue. The lockdown measures were introduced as part of a state of emergency put in place in November as the pandemic surged again across Hungary. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has instructed the Iranian government to reject British and American-made vaccines. In a live television broadcast on Friday, the Ayatollah announced that the imports of US and British vaccines into the country are banned. The statement follows the rise in tensions between Iran and the US. Iran announced the enrichment of its uranium stock up to 20% purity earlier this week. It is also reported to have seized a South Korean oil tanker earlier in the week. Japan Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has said that Olympic Games will be staged this summer despite a state of emergency in Tokyo. The organizers are striving hard to ensure that Tokyo Olympic Games are held in a safe and secure environment. The Japan Prime Minister said the rapid spread of COVID-19 across the country has created a situation that could have a serious impact on people's lives and the economy. This has prompted him to declare the state of emergency in Tokyo. Meanwhile, Japanese health authorities have said that they are hopeful to begin vaccinations by late February. In China, the capital of northern Hebei province has barred people from leaving the city after it became the hotbed of the recent COVID-19 outbreak. Hebei reported a total of 310 COVID-positive cases, including 183 asymptomatic cases in the past week. The Chinese mainland on Thursday reported 110 newly positive COVID-19 cases, including 57 asymptomatic cases, the National Health Commission said on Friday. This is All India Radio giving you the news. For quick news updates around the clock, follow us on Twitter at AIR News Alerts.
3 steps to stay protected and stay safe from COVID-19. Wear face mask, 2 gaz ki duri to maintain social distancing, maintain hand and face hygiene.
Diplomatic advisor to the President of France, Emmanuel Bon, today called on Prime Minister Narendra Modi and discussed wide-ranging bilateral and global issues. In a tweet, Mr. Modi said he had a productive meeting with Mr. Bon. Mr. Modi expressed joy at the progress in India-France strategic partnership, a force for global good in the post-COVID world. The Prime Minister reiterated the invitation to French President Emmanuel Macron to visit India. Meanwhile, India and France held their annual strategic dialogue on Thursday in New Delhi. National Security Advisor Ajit Doval led the Indian delegation, while the French delegation was led by Mr. Bon. The two sides held discussions on wide-ranging bilateral and global issues. The French embassy in New Delhi, in a statement, said that the delegations reiterated their attachment to an inclusive, rules-based Indo-Pacific for a multipolar Asia in a multipolar world. Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla also met Mr. Emmanuel Bon, diplomatic advisor to President. In a tweet, Mr. Shringla extended the Indian government's condolences on the terrorist attacks in France. Further, he conveyed Prime Minister Narendra Modi's message that India stands with France in the fight against terror. Qatar on Thursday night started rerouting some of its flights to pass through Saudi Arabia's airspace. Saudi Arabia, along with other Gulf Cooperation Council members, signed the Al-Ula Declaration at the Gulf Summit on on Tuesday. Qatar's national carrier undertook a Doha-Johannesburg trip passing through the Saudi airspace on Thursday night. The International Air Transport Association, IATA, welcomed the development. In a statement, it appreciated the signing of the Solidarity and Stability Agreement. It said that it will see Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates and Egypt open their air, land and sea borders with Qatar.
Indian Embassy in Beijing today said that there is no positive development on the return of Indian students enrolled in Chinese universities to resume their studies. With 1 year to pass in anticipation to get the permission to return to China to resume their studies, thousands of Indian students have no other option than online studies, which is difficult especially in the field of medicine. Over 23,000 Indian students pursuing their higher studies in China, especially in medicine courses, are under tremendous pressure and distress as they have lost one precious year. Our Beijing correspondent has this report.
Chinese authorities have repeatedly advised that COVID-19 restrictions in place are not likely to be relaxed in coming months and students should be advised accordingly. Indian Embassy said that students enrolled in Chinese universities should make appropriate arrangements for continuing their education. Due to COVID-19 outbreak in China, over 20,000 Indian students are waiting to return to China have become victims of uncertainties involved, many for past 1 year. They are forced to take online classes, which is of less utility for courses like medicine involving more of practicals. When it comes for these medical graduates to clear compulsory foreign medical graduate examination to get a license to practice in India, results are not encouraging. Anshuman Mishra for World News, All India Radio, Beijing.
The Indian Embassy in Beijing is continuously following up the release of 39 stranded sailors in China. Speaking at a press briefing, spokesperson of the External Affairs Ministry, Mr. Anurag Srivastava, said that the Indian ambassador to China has personally taken up the issue of the crew members on board MV Jaganand and MV Anastasia.
Further update, what I have is that our ambassador has again personally taken up this issue with the Chinese Vice Foreign Minister, and he has requested for early approval for crew change for the crew members aboard MV Jaganand and MV Anastasia. The ministry is also in regular contact with the Chinese embassy here in Delhi, and in view of China's strict COVID-19 pandemic control and preventive measures, as well as various travel restrictions which are in place, the Chinese authorities have detailed steps which they have outlined to ensure the smooth movement of new crew to China to effect this crew change. And these steps have to be complied by the concerned shipping companies. With regard to the request for exploring alternative modes of crew change at sea, this possibility has also been taken up with the Chinese authorities.
The Pakistani Anti-Terrorism Court has sentenced the mastermind and Lashkar-e-Taiba operations commander Zaki-ur-Rahman Lakhvi to 15 years in prison. Commenting on the development, Mr. Anurag Srivastava termed the action farcical.
Look, what I would say is the timing of these actions clearly suggests the intention of conveying a sense of compliance ahead of the APJG meeting and the next FATF plenary meeting in February 2021. It has become routine for Pakistan to come up with such farcical actions prior to important meetings. UN proscribed entities and designated terrorists act as proxies for Pakistani establishment to fulfill its anti-India agenda. It is for the international community to hold Pakistan to account and ensure that it takes credible action against terror groups, terror infrastructure and individual terrorists.
Amur falcons were spotted in some parts of India's western state of Maharashtra this week. These tiny migratory raptors undertake a dramatic annual migration every winter from their breeding grounds in Russia and northern China to southern Africa. En route, they graze India to the utter delight of bird watchers and nature enthusiasts in the country. We have a report.
Rare sighting of Amur falcons near Navi Mumbai in the western Indian state of Maharashtra has delighted the nature lovers. These IUCN-listed birds are protected under India's Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 and also Convention on Migratory Species. The raptors are famous for their long migratory route from the breeding grounds of Russia and China to southern Africa. They usually arrive in northeastern India in winter for a short halt before moving on towards the Arabian Sea. bird enthusiasts in the state have welcomed the rare occurrence and have highlighted the need to provide safer halting spots for them. This is Sangeeta Godbole for World News, All India Radio.
The second COVID-19 vaccination dry run was successfully completed throughout the country today. The massive mock drill was conducted in 736 districts across 33 states and union territories. The objective of this dry run was a rehearsal of the actual vaccination administration process. Our correspondent reports that around 170,000 vaccinators and 3 lakh vaccination team members have been trained in the process to be followed at the vaccination sites.
The 16th Pravasi Bharatiya Divas will be held on Saturday. The one-day virtual convention will be inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Chief guest this year is the President of Suriname, Chandrika Prasad Santokhi. He will address the participants. The valedictory address will be delivered by President Ramnath Kovind. The theme of the 16th Pravasi Bharatiya Divas is contributing to Atmanirbhar Bharat. A report.
Pravasi Bharatiya Divas is celebrated once in every 2 years to strengthen the engagement of the overseas Indian community with the Indian government and is also an endeavor which reconnects them with their roots. This year, due to the pandemic, the convention is being held in a virtual mode which will be inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. External Affairs Minister Dr. Subramaniam Jaishankar recently said that the Indian government values its vast diaspora enormously as they are the image of the country in the world. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has as well time and again said that the Indian diaspora is the living root bridge between India and the world. He believes that the success of our diaspora has changed the perception of both India and Indians across the world. This belief gets cemented by the fact that nearly 10% of the founders of high-tech companies in the US are people of Indian origin. The growing prominence of Indians in both business and politics abroad is definitely raising the profile of the country and potentially can further encourage future trade links. Huge number of participants have registered this year to participate in the convention, where 30 eminent diaspora members will be honored with the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Awards. 15 winners of the Bharat Ko Janiye quiz will also be announced in the convention, who would be later invited for a pan-India tour after the COVID-19 pandemic. Anand Chaturvedi, World News Desk.
Ahead of the occasion, members of the Indian diaspora who have made a mark in the respective countries of adoption as diverse as Fiji to London spoke exclusively to All India Radio and shared their experiences. We spoke to Dr. M.K. Gautam, former Vice-Chancellor of the East West University in Amsterdam, who shared his view on the eclectic culture and language used in the close to 2 lakh strong Indian community in the Netherlands.
हॉलैंड में कोई 1.5 लाख 2 लाख हिंदुस्तानी हैं। वो अपनी भाषा को सूरीनामी हिंदुस्तानी कहते हैं, जिसमें हिंदी और उर्दू दोनों होते हैं और साथ में भाषा, साहित्य, संस्कृति और उनकी पहचान वो सभी होती है।
Speaking about his deep-rooted Indian connection, Mr. Harish Lodia, a resident of Fiji, said that he is still very close to Indian culture and traditions.
मेरे पिताजी कहते थे कि जो भी है इंडियन ब्लड हमारे अंदर है, ये खून का रिश्ता इज फॉरएवर. द डायस्पोरा एंड द कनेक्शन इज फॉरएवर.
Also connecting with All India Radio is Mr. KBL Saxena from London. He says that Indian diaspora has had a significant impact in the UK. He says the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas strengthens and maintains the interest of the Indian community in UK with India.
2003 में जब अटल जी ने इसको प्रवासी भारतीय दिवस को इंट्रोड्यूस किया था पहली दफे, मैं जब से इस प्रवासी भारतीय दिवस में जुड़ा हुआ हूँ. इसका बहुत बड़ा इम्पैक्ट है यूके में कि भारत सरकार चाहती है कि जो प्रवासी भारतीय हैं उनका भारत से इंटरेस्ट जुड़ा रहे.
Mr. Bhav Dhillon, resident of Auckland in New Zealand, who is also the managing director of the largest Indian-owned manufacturing company in the field of cement and concrete in New Zealand, he said that the Indian diaspora is the true ambassador of the nation and are living the bridges between the foreign countries and Bharat.
भारत का जो स्नेह है, जो प्रेम है towards the game of cricket is also very important part in building the India-New Zealand relationship because New Zealand भी क्रिकेट में एक काफी बड़ा देश है और इससे दोनों में जो स्पोर्टिंग कनेक्शंस बनते हैं उसमें भी हमारे लोगों का जो डायस्पोरा का एक बहुत बड़ा रोल है.
In today's Hotspot segment, we have an exclusive interview with Mr. Sanjay Bhattacharya, Secretary, Consular, Passport and Visa Division in the Ministry of External Affairs. Mr. Bhattacharya outlines the theme and the context of Pravasi Bharati Divas this year.
So what is the theme of Pravasi Bharatiya Divas this year and how relevant it is in the current context of COVID-19 pandemic, sir?
As you know, Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, the convention is held every 2 years. This year, the theme is contributing to Atmanirbhar Bharat. It is relevant both from the context of COVID as well as the overall context of our national development. India today is poised to regaining its due stature in the global community, and Atmanirbhar Bharat is the key instrument that will make India reach there. We recognize the due role of Pravasis, who number 31 million across the world, in this particular adventure that we are embarked on. And we believe that with the help and support and contribution of our Pravasis, we will be better enabled to achieve our goals in the global committee. For very long, Pravasi Bharatiya Divas has been an occasion for celebration of our very deep connections with our Pravasis, all of whom retain the connections with the motherland, even as they attain great success in the countries where they now reside. Today, as we have been for the last several years, we renew this pledge and we give them new opportunities and we hear their ideas as to how they can become part of the national development process. Tomorrow session, the first will be to discuss specific issues of how Pravasis can contribute to Atmanirbhar Bharat. The second will be on how we, along with the Pravasis, will be facing the post-COVID challenges because, as you know, this is going to be a new normal. The Indians who live within the country and our Pravasi brothers and sisters across the world shall face these challenges together.
So what are the new features of the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas this year?
The first new feature is that we are going to be having the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas convention in a virtual mode. As you know, every Pravasi Bharatiya Divas in the past has been held in the physical mode, where in the true tradition of India, we all come together and celebrate our history, our culture and our heritage. But this time, because of COVID, we were unable to do so. But we said that our link with our Pravasis is so deep that we shall not let it be hampered and we shall not have a break in this beautiful celebration of Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. Before the convention, which is to be held tomorrow, we have had 5 Pravasi Bharatiya conferences. These were on the issues of economic cooperation, cultural connections, our links through the media and entertainment, our brothers and sisters who work in the Gulf, and just today we had the Youth Pravasi Bharatiya Divas conference. These were all held in the virtual mode. We realized that even in the virtual mode, our connections are still as deep, and that actually we can reach out to a much larger audience because we actually work through our embassies and consulates as well through live streaming, and the attendance has been very, very encouraging. But of course, there is a beauty of the real connection, which we shall miss, but we know our brothers and sisters across the world will be with us in sharing the sentiment that is that of the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. Tomorrow, Minister will inaugurate the session and we shall have a keynote address by our chief guest, who is the President of Suriname, Sri Chandrika Prasad Santokhi. As you know, it is a great pride for all of us that a person of Indian origin has been elected as the President of another country. As you know, there are a few others as well. And in the evening, the Honorable Rashtrapati Ji will be delivering the valedictory address at the valedictory session, at which we shall also recognize the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Award, which will be conferred upon prominent Indian diaspora members across the world.
So what has been the response of diaspora towards Pravasi Bharatiya Divas this year, sir?
The response has been extremely encouraging because we have found that in the Pravasi Bharatiya conferences, the number of people who have participated has been way more than in the past. Part of it is because of the advantage of the digital communication and the fact that all our embassies and consulates have been involved in the process in reaching out to the communities across the world. world. The second feature that we have found is that many of our community members in different parts of the world have enthusiastically participated, particularly the youth members, in the Bharat Ko Janiye quiz competition. More than 14,000 people have registered for this, and tomorrow at the opening session we shall be announcing the winners for this Pravasi Bharatiya quiz competition, which is called Bharat Ko Janiye. The winners, which are in three categories of PIOs, which is the persons of Indian origin, NRIs, the non-resident Indians, and even the foreigners amongst the youth community, find this as a way to connect with the India that they miss, the India whose culture that they're attracted to. And we shall be recognizing the winners in this. Once the COVID situation improves, we shall be bringing these people to India for a Bharat Darshan. We also have another very, very interesting program called Know India program, which is again for the youth. What we do is we bring groups of youth, particularly from Girmitia countries and also from other countries, and they come and rekindle the connections that their ancestors have had, their forefathers have had with the motherland. And this brings and builds new bond of affection between India and its wide diaspora across the world.
Thanks a lot, sir, for sharing your inputs, and we really look forward to a very active and engaging Pravasi Bharatiya Divas in this edition.
Now, let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Wall Street Journal has reported that India's vaccine colossus is a model for the world to follow. According to New York Times, Democrats could vote on impeachment of Donald Trump's presidency. Washington Post reports that the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine works against new coronavirus variant. Himalayan Times writes that 4 former Chief Justices of the Nepal Supreme Court have termed the dissolution of the House of Representatives unconstitutional. Sputnik has reported that Iran's Revolutionary Guards have unveiled an underground missile base near Persian Gulf coast. The Sydney Morning Herald writes that Australian Cabinet has mandated a negative COVID-19 test for anyone to board a plane. And moving on to sports, in cricket, India were 96 for the loss of 2 wickets against Australia at the close of play on the second day in the third test match at Sydney. Earlier, the hosts were all out for 338. Ravindra Jadeja took 4 wickets for the visitors, while Steven Smith scored 131 runs for the hosts. In tennis, Taiwan's She Shu-wei defeated Marketa Vondrousova 3-6, 6-3, 7-6 to reach the Abu Dhabi WTA second round. In hockey, India announced the 24-member Indian junior women's hockey squad for the Chile tour in January. Team will be led by defender Suman Devi Todam, while Ishika Chaudhary will be the vice captain.
And now, before we end this bulletin, a quick look at the headlines. India to chair UN Security Council panels on counter-terrorism, Taliban sanctions and Libya sanctions. New Delhi slams Islamabad for aiding and abating cross-border terrorism. Flights from Britain to India resume after being suspended in the wake of finding a new COVID strain in UK. Nationwide dry run for COVID vaccination conducted successfully in India. 16th edition of Pravasi Bharatiya Divas to be held in a virtual mode on Saturday. And in sports, India won at 96 for 2 in the first innings of Sydney cricket test, responding to the Aussie total of 338 runs. India is celebrating the 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let us listen to his favourite bhajan, Vaishnava Jan, by artists from New Zealand. Vaishnavi And with that, we end this bulletin. See you at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.